E. It felt like my whole world was crumbling beneath my feet. The moment I realized my college fund was gone, the money I had worked my whole life to build, was the moment I lost faith in everything. But what hurt even more? It wasn't just the stolen money, it wasn't just the betrayal of my stepmom. No, it was the fact that I had trusted her, and now I was left with nothing. That's when it all hit me. My stepmom had orchestrated this, all of it. She'd manipulated my father, turned him against me, and then had me kicked out. It was the ultimate betrayal. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. But what could I do? I was just a 19-year-old girl, alone in a world that suddenly felt so much darker. My dreams of college, my dreams of a future, everything seemed like a cruel joke. But let me tell you this. She had no idea who she was messing with. She thought she had taken everything from me. She was wrong. It started with small things, little manipulations here and there that I had shrugged off. At first, it seemed like she was just trying to fit in, to play the role of the perfect stepmother. But slowly I started noticing the cracks, the subtle ways she would try to push me out, and I ignored it, convinced that it was all in my head. But then, everything changed. I had always been close to my father, and for the longest time I thought that nothing could come between us. He was my rock, the one person who understood me, who had my back no matter what. But when my stepmom got involved, things started to shift. I could feel her presence everywhere. At first I thought it was just jealousy, but it was much darker than that. And one day, I walked into my father's office, only to find her sitting there, her eyes gleaming with that look she would always get when she was about to pull something off. I knew instantly that something was wrong. She was holding papers in her hands, and my stomach dropped as I realized what was happening. The documents were related to my college fund. I had worked so hard to save that money. It wasn't just a fund, it was my ticket to a better future, my way out of this toxic environment. But there it was, slipping right through my fingers. My father wasn't just ignorant of her actions, he was complicit in them. The betrayal stung like nothing else. The trust I had in him, the man who had always promised to support me, was gone. Just like that. And I didn't even know where to turn. Who could I turn to? But I wasn't going to just sit back and let her ruin my life. I wasn't going to let her win. And that's when the plan started to form in my mind. She thought I was weak, that I couldn't survive without her. She thought she had me cornered, that I would just crumble under the pressure. But she was wrong. I spent the next few days doing what I do best, watching, gathering information, observing every move she made. I watched as she manipulated my father, as she twisted every word I said to him. I watched as she systematically tore down my confidence, slowly eroding the foundation of my future. But I wasn't going to let it end that way. I needed to be smart. I needed to be patient. I couldn't make any rash decisions. I had to outplay her at her own game, and so I did. I knew exactly where she kept the bank account information for my college fund. I had learned how to access it without her knowing, and one night after she went to bed, I did it. I took what was rightfully mine. But this time, I wasn't just taking back my money. I was taking back my power. The next day, I called my father into the living room. He had no idea what was coming. I had already set the stage. I knew his weaknesses, his vulnerabilities. And I used that to my advantage. I confronted him about everything, the money, the manipulation, the lies. I showed him everything she had done, everything she had hidden from him. And when I saw the look on his face, the shock, the disbelief, the realization that his own wife had been using him, I knew I had won. He had no choice but to believe me. But the final blow was yet to come. I knew that if I wanted to truly get back at her, I needed to make her face the consequences of her actions. I had to ensure she understood the depth of her betrayal. So I made the decision that would change everything. I called her out, in front of everyone. When she walked into the room, her face was full of that same smug expression she always wore. She had no idea what was coming. I stood there, calm and collected, as I exposed everything. The lies, the deceit, the manipulation. I watched as her face went pale, as she realized that the tables had turned. It was a moment of pure triumph. The feeling of finally regaining control, of finally standing up for myself, was indescribable. She thought she had crushed me, but instead, I had crushed her. She tried to defend herself, of course, but nothing she said could undo the damage she had caused. The truth was out, and there was no going back. What did she do next? Well, let's just say that her actions didn't end there. She thought she could still make me crumble, that she could still control the situation. But I wasn't going to let her. I had made sure to have everything documented, every word, every action. And when she tried to retaliate, I took action. I filed a report with the authorities. I didn't just sit back and let her get away with it. In the end, she was forced to face the consequences of her actions. And my father, though devastated, finally saw the truth. The bond between us, though strained, was restored. But the best part of all? My stepmom never saw it coming. She thought she could break me, that she could steal my future and crush my spirit. But instead, she created a force that would not be silenced, and I would never forget the look on her face when she realized she had underestimated me. The aftermath of everything that had happened was like a fog settling in. I couldn't really tell what had been accomplished, and I certainly wasn't ready for what came next. But in that moment, the only thing I knew was that the game had shifted, and the power had returned to my hands. For days, I couldn't shake the feeling of triumph, of finally having the strength to stand up for myself. I'd been passive for so long, letting my stepmom push me around, manipulating situations until I was almost a shadow in my own home. But I wasn't that person anymore. She thought she had crushed me when she stole my college fund and had me kicked out, but she was wrong. What she didn't realize was that I had been planning my next move for years. Every argument, every cruel word she'd said, every manipulation had been stored in my mind like ammunition. I was a ticking time bomb, just waiting for the right moment to explode. And now, that moment had arrived. I had no intention of letting her walk away without consequences. No, not after everything she'd done to me. She wasn't just a villain in this story. She was the architect of my downfall. She thought I would just fall apart, but I had something she never saw coming: resilience. And the best part? She had no idea that I had already prepared for the storm I was about to unleash. I didn't just take what was mine when I accessed the college fund. No, I made sure to leave her with a trail of evidence, a paper trail, if you will, that would expose her betrayal for what it was. I knew her weak spots, her vanity, her desperation for control. She had always underestimated me, and that was her mistake. I had spent days documenting everything: conversations, emails, messages. Every word, every interaction that could prove she had lied, manipulated, and stolen from me. She had no idea how close I had been watching her. I knew exactly where to hit her, where it would hurt the most. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not after everything she had taken from me. Not after everything she had stolen from my future. My college education, my freedom, my sense of self-worth. She had destroyed so much, but I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I remember the day I confronted her again like it was yesterday. It was the calm before the storm. She had been acting as if everything was normal, walking around the house, playing the role of the sweet, loving stepmom, but I knew better. I knew the truth. It was a Sunday afternoon, just before dinner. The house was quiet. My father was in the backyard, fixing something with his tools, completely unaware of the storm I was about to create. I could hear her moving around the kitchen, humming some random tune that she always played when she thought everything was under control. But I wasn't fooled. I walked in, calm and composed. I had the documents in my hand, the proof of her deception, and I wasn't going to hold back. The moment she saw me, she froze. I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with that same practiced smile. but I wasn't here for games anymore. I need to talk to you, I said, my voice steady. She didn't respond immediately, instead continuing her task as though I hadn't just walked in with the evidence of her betrayal, but I wasn't going to let her ignore me. I laid the documents on the kitchen counter, watching her eyes widen as she realized what I was holding. She tried to cover it up, of course, tried to act like it was no big deal, that I was misunderstanding everything. But the walls were closing in on her. She had no way out now. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to push me out of my own life had been exposed for what it truly was. I don't know why you think you can get away with this, I said, the anger rising in my chest now. You've lied to Dad. You've stolen from me. You've ruined everything. She stammered, her words fumbling out, but I wasn't listening. I couldn't listen. The betrayal was too deep. The hurt was too much. She had taken so much from me, but now I had the power to take it back. I trusted you, I continued, my voice shaking now with raw emotion. And you did this. She tried to defend herself, but I had already anticipated it. I didn't give her the satisfaction of cutting me off. Instead, I let her talk herself into a corner. I let her unravel. And then, when the moment was right, I made my final move. You don't deserve to be here, I said, my words cutting like a knife. Not anymore. The look on her face was priceless. I had finally stripped her of her mask. The confident, controlling woman she had been pretending to be for so long was gone. In her place stood a woman who realized that she had just lost everything. She had underestimated me, thought I was too weak to fight back, but now she had to face the consequences of her actions. I'm leaving, I said, turning to walk away, knowing that I had won. And I'm taking everything that's mine with me. She tried to stop me, of course. She begged, she pleaded, but it was too late. The damage was done, and I had already taken what was rightfully mine. But the real satisfaction came when I saw her face as she realized she had lost. Not just my college fund, not just her hold over my father, but her control over me. And that was the sweetest victory of all.